Okay, so we are back to our Monday Night Mishlei, and we're up to Mishlei Yud Gimel Zion 13:7. And it's always dangerous to make predictions about Mishlei, but I predicted in the blurb for the shiur that this is going to be there are multiple readings, but I think this is going to be a fairly straightforward pasuk. Okay, so we'll see what happens. But there are at least two translations. Okay, Yesh mis asher ve'ein kol, mis roshesh ve'hon rav. And the two translations hinge on what you do with these two words here. So anyone want to try translating?
Um, there, there is someone who is rich, or someone who makes rich.
Okay, so you're close, you're almost there, right? Not rich and not makes rich, but a little bit more
Made
specific than that.
was made rich.
Nope.
Something. No,
Hispa'el, reflexive.
makes
Makes
himself
himself.
rich.
Makes himself rich. Okay.
But it's nothing.
Okay, so yeah, this is a hard one. I mean, it's hard to get the exact translation, right? There is not
Nothing.
literally there is not everything, right? But let's say but there isn't anything, okay? Literally there is not all, right? Okay. Um and then misroshesh v'hon rav.
And one who makes himself poor, like
Yeah.
Roth.
And yeah, let's say and one who makes himself poor, v'hon rav.
Uh, right. And there is a lot.
Yeah. And there is a lot of what's hone?
Wealth.
Wealth, yeah.
Mm,
Okay. So that's how I would have translated it. Okay. There is, however, a more obscure or I guess less common meaning for the hispa'el, which is not reflexive. Anyone know what that is?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So the verbs are using the hispa'el, which is usually translated as the reflexive, which means he makes him mis asher means he makes himself ashir, he makes himself rich, and then mis roshesh he makes himself rash, he makes himself poor. There's another way to translate hispa'el, the reflexive, which is not translated as reflexive, but it's not very well known. In fact, I only know it from this pasuk, or I only learned it from this pasuk. I'm going to actually read it from the Meiri. Okay, there are a lot of meforshim who say this, but the Meiri spells it out in grammatical terms. He says, "Yish meforshim mis asher shemachzik atzmo ke'ashir v'hu ani." He makes himself out to be an ashir. Okay, I don't know how good translation for machzik. He poses as an ani, as an ashir, but he is poor. Umis roshes v'hon rav, and there's one who pretends to be poor, but he has a lot of wealth. Shemachzik atzmo kirash v'hu ashir. He poses as a poor person, but he has wealth. Val derech emes, and in truth, he's not using derech emes the way the Ramban uses it. He doesn't mean according to Kabbalah. He means like in truth. Zehu echa me'achani binyan hispael. This is one of the modes of the hispa'el of the reflexive. Rotalemor shemasabiv mikre eze davar la'atzmo ve'enenubo. That it makes a secondary feature or an accidental feature of something into an essence when it's not really there. V'chein hena. So to here, who misasher, he is misasher. Who rotalemor meaning misabiv mikre haosher la'atzmo. He brings about the characteristic of wealth for himself. V'omer lakol shu asher. He tells everyone that he's rich. Vein lo klum, but he doesn't have anything. Umis roshesh, and one who makes himself poor. Rotzalomar misabiv mikre haoni la'atzmo. He brings about the characteristic of poverty to himself. Lomar shehu ani, as if to say that he's poor. V'yesh lohon rav, and he has a lot of wealth. Okay, so the second translation is there is one who pretends to be, I guess, what would be more precise than pretends? I guess makes himself seem seem rich but has nothing, and one who makes himself seem poor but has a lot of wealth. Okay, yeah. All right, let's see what the other meforshim say. So Mitzus Tzion takes it straight. Yisroshes miloshin rash ani. Actually, he doesn't even take a stance on that. That he just says it comes from the word of rash and ani, which means poor. Saadi Gon says Yish mis asher blihon. There's one who, again, it's difficult to tell from his translation, but he just says there's one who makes himself wealthy without wealth. Mis roshish behon rav, and there's one who makes himself poor with a lot of wealth. So the only thing he does just linguistically is he puts the word wealth Ve'ein kol, he's saying that he doesn't have everything means he doesn't have wealth, and it's just using kol. It's using the word everything as a stand-in for a lot of wealth. Okay, I don't think that's worth writing. Okay, then I always forgot to look at the Targum. Is dim'ater nafshe v'les kol mida'am umamaskin nafshe umazale sagi'a. Okay, so there is someone who makes himself rich, um, and he has nothing, or he doesn't have anything. That's probably the best way to say it. He doesn't have anything. Umamasakin anafshe, someone who makes himself poor, umazale sagia, and he has a lot of wealth. And in case you're wondering, in case you see the word mazel here, and you're like, oh, doesn't mazel mean like luck? So the answer is mazel is the word in Hebrew for hone, for wealth. And if you think about it, we say the same thing in English. We say fortune, right? Fortune means like luck, and it also means like having wealth. Um, uh, Alex says in the chat, projects wealth may be a good translation. Yeah, I think the only reason I think that's a good understanding of it. I think the only reason why I defaulted to makes himself seem rich is because it allows us to preserve the phrase makes himself, but you just add in the word seem. So like preserves it. It's like the closest thing to the Hebrew. But Alex, you're right also. Okay, Isaiah, you have a question or a
Is there
comment?
no reflexive, like he's parallel in Aramaic type thing?
I guess I don't even know.
I guess I'm wondering if if it's nafshe, does it just mean self or it means
Right.
nefesh, like
It
something
could
to
be
the
no,
head?
so it definitely means self, but it could be that he is like taking a stance that on the first translation by putting the word self in there, then he's taking a stance. I don't see anything new in terms of this, so I think he'll fall out on one side or the other. Okay. R scroll. Some pretend to be rich and have nothing, but others act poor and have great wealth. So R scroll goes with translation two. Refers to there's one who considers himself rich and has nothing. There's one who thinks himself poor and has great wealth. Okay, so that's really a third translation. Okay, it's kind of in between the two, right? I guess it's closer to the second one because he's not really rich. He's making himself rich, but instead of making himself rich in appearance, he's making himself rich in his own mind. Um, and then Alter says, one man feigns riches having nothing at all, another plays poor with great wealth. Um, yeah, okay, fine. So that is closer to that's the second translation. Okay, so there we have it. So I guess we'll ask questions here, and if your question is specific to one of the translations, then just note that at the beginning. Okay, what are the questions? Yeah, yeah.
Um, so who's the bad one and who's the good one?
Okay, right, yeah. So that's a good question. So, um, is this pasuk, uh, like, is this a typical pasuk with a good decision and a bad decision? And if so, sorry, and if so, which one is which? And if not, are these both good or both bad or neutral? Yeah, right. So that I guess is the atypical format of this pasuk. Yeah, strange. Yeah, Rifki.
Yeah, also kind of like a little bit based off of that question on the second half of the first translation, like for why would it be? I'm assuming that the second half is like the good thing to do. I don't know. That's just my inclination.
Okay.
And what does it actually mean to like make yourself poor? And how could it be possible that there is a lot of wealth? Is that figurative? Is that literal?
Okay, right. So let's actually ask that as a general question here, which is the well, like are I guess, yeah, is the wealth and poverty in this pasuk literal or figurative? And ordinarily, obviously, we take things as literally as possible, but the fact that this is particularly because this pasuk uses wealth and poverty in two ways. The first and third quarter of the pasuk, and the second and fourth quarter, right? So you could have a scenario where, like, yesh mis asher is that like he, pretends to be wealthy, and that's talking about like imaginary wealth or considers himself wealthy, but he doesn't have anything, or vice versa. And then Rifki's question is an extension of the second half, which is, sorry, yeah, the second half according to the assumption that there's a good decision, which is, I guess, if the second half is a sorry, is a good decision since and can you articulate your intuition? Because I also have an intuition by why that would be the good half. Yeah.
So I guess I just feel like it would be the better half, like one, even though it doesn't say tzaddik, that it would be like someone akin to a tzaddik. Because I don't know, it's bad, but I guess I just feel like in Judaism, it's not that it's bad to become rich, but it's better to me to like, I guess, be poor, but like figuratively be happy, as opposed to the opposite, which is to be literally rich, but then like mentally be like not happy or not actually have anything like that lasts.
Okay, so I definitely hear what you're saying. I had a different intuition, which was that, or is that the same intuition? It's hard for me to say the intuition without giving away one way to read it. So I'll just leave it like this for now. Okay, if the second half is a good decision, then like how is the like impoverishing oneself a like good? Okay, Alex.
I'm not exactly sure how to phrase this question, but are these statements meant to be taken as you should emulate one of these people, or is it just information so you know how to relate to people in the world? Read.
Good. So even though we could classify that under the first question, I think we're better off saying our usual question, but then acknowledging the weirdness of the pasuk, which is, what is the practical decision-making advice? Okay, is this saying? Oh, so first of all, I guess, yeah, and who is the audience, right? So like, is this saying that we should or shouldn't be like either of these individuals? Or is this informing us that there are people like this in the world, and it's telling us something about how to relate to them? Yeah, right. Very, very unclear, right? It's not quite clear what we're supposed to do with this information. Okay, next is my dad. You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Is it possible to just say the person in the second part of the pasuk is just a modest human being? And
yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're not gonna take interpretations yet.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll just get into the questions. Yeah, Isaiah.
I think this pasuk is like written a little strangely to me. Like it starts with yesh but doesn't have a
Yeah,
vav in the second
I noticed
half.
that also.
So like,
right.
Is yesh really applying to both halves?
Okay. Yeah.
Really
so the question is, in reading this pasuk, does the yesh, okay, sorry, hold on a second here. There is one in the first half apply to both, or is it just applied to the first half? Yeah, you would think it feels like it reads according to that applies to both, and I think all the English translations that we saw said that. It's just like, why can't he just add another word yesh? I mean, it is funny. Yeah. So that's like I'm going to italicize this because it's a stylistic question, even though it does have some implication here, but I sense it's a stylistic question. Yeah. Ayala.
Okay, so this is more on translation one, but also can apply to both. But first, what does misasher and misroshesh mean?
Right.
And then specifically in translation one, like how exactly? Is it like through chachma that he's doing that, or like other ways?
Right. Okay. And make oneself or mean. And then how do these people do this? Yeah. Okay. Tamar?
Can you hear me? Is this coming through? Okay. Oh yeah. I guess for the this it's like kind of what's the scenario, an elaboration, I guess, but like why would someone do this?
Okay, right. Yeah, so that's actually a good way to attach a specific question to the general question. What scenario is this talking about here? And then why would a person do either of these things? Good. Yeah, and obviously that's very contingent on how we understand these. Yeah, Alex?
My question is kind of a follow-up to Tamar's.
Yeah.
I'm curious, is it possible for one person to encompass both of these clauses at different points of their lives, or is it like you could either be one or the other?
Okay, that's a good question, right? So, I'm gonna put that over here, which is, I mean, I can see how it could be classified under tomorrow's also, but I'm just classifying it under after the question about the words, which is, are I'm gonna say, are these two different like activities slash circumstances that can characterize a person at different times, or are these two like Mishleic personalities? Is that what you're asking? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Also, part of me like wants to know, is there also like a middle ground, or is it like there's a spectrum where it's either you're
Right.
on one or the other?
That's a good question also, right? Okay. And is there a middle ground? Yeah, actually, I'm going to put this as a separate question, right? Is there a middle, like, okay, is this a binary phenomenon, or is there a middle ground? Right. So certainly it would seem to be that each side is quantitative, right? Like it seems like you, no matter which translation you use, it seems like just on intuitively, you can a person could like do this to a greater or lesser degree. But I do think that having a middle ground is like a conceptually different thing. Like, is there, is that just the person who doesn't engage in either of these activities, or is it like, is it some other way to relate to wealth? That's a good question. Okay. Ariel.
Yeah, how are we defining in call and hone?
Yeah,
Meaning
good question.
is it limited to money, or is it like, mindset, mentality?
Okay, so we do have Rivki's question on the what are the wealth and poverty, but I think you are raising another question, which is what like quantitatively speaking. Okay, it could be quantitatively or a degree. It doesn't mean like necessarily like numbers, but quantitatively speaking, what does the Ain Cole? Okay, he lacks everything. Okay, mean, and what does Hon Rav, a lot of wealth, mean? Yeah.
Yeah, also how can you lack everything? What does that mean?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. How can you lack everything? Yeah, you can see why Sadiq translated it as he doesn't have lots of wealth, as opposed to he doesn't have everything or anything. Yeah, Isaiah?
Okay, a couple of questions. First one,
Okay.
further in the minor question I asked before.
Yeah.
I noticed the pasuk is weirder than I thought because it's
Okay.
yesh ve'ain, so it's like there is and he's not
Oh, okay.
in the beginning in the pasuk, and then all like seems like both of those words are lacking in the second half.
Right.
It should be
Yeah.
like yesh
Okay,
ve'yesh
that's
or something
okay.
like
That's
that.
also okay. Good. So, alternatively, and I'm gonna say alternatively because I think it's a question of what you do with the yesh.
Yeah.
Or yeah, or I can say additionally. Okay, additionally, um, uh, like what's up with the yesh ain pairing in the first half and neither in the second? Yeah, that's a fun question. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Other question was this is similar to well, like is the hone rav, so he has a lot of hone. So
yeah.
is the Kol Ain Kol home? Like there's no is it talking specifically about wealth or is it literally anything or like we asked what does it mean, but like
Right.
is it the
Okay.
opposite I guess of the home?
Yeah. So is the everything he lacks also a measure of wealth, or is it saying he lacks like even more than wealth? Right. Yeah. Like yeah, and I guess is it right, is it just the opposite? Okay, yeah. Avital?
Okay, I'm not even sure if this is like minor or major. It's just like whatever, I'll just say, and then I guess we could figure it out. But the part of like, I guess the grammar of mitasher that we were talking about, and also for the second word that's like kind of reflexive,
Yeah.
seems like purposeful because they're doing it to themselves.
Yeah.
Kind of. So is the second part of each of the clauses, is that purposeful also, or is that like a result of their first purposeful action, but that this is like an outgrowth of that? Or is that
Okay.
also?
I'm going to ask something that I thought you were asking, but maybe I'm missing it because the way I'm asking it is much simpler. So either I'm totally missing your question. Okay. Is Ain Kol like a description of the person doing the action, or is it a result of the person doing the action? Or is that a different question?
Yeah, it's like, no, it is kind of similar. Like, it's kind of basically just like, is this also intentional, or is this a byproduct of like their original action?
Okay, let me think about a way to combine the two questions in a way that opens up the possibility. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'm gonna say it in a weird way, but I think it's the most broad way to say it here, which is, okay, is the or what? Sorry, what is the relationship between the second and first? No. How does the second quarter qualify the first, and the fourth quarter qualify the third? Okay, so in other words, is it a another like act of the person in the first half, right? In the first halves, or is it a result, or is it another feature, like characteristic? I think those are the three ways to read it. In other words, like this: either Yishmis Asher, so that's an action he's doing, and then Ein Kol is some other action somehow, okay? Or Yishmis Asher, and as a result, Ein Kol, or Yishmis Asher, but in reality, Ein Kol. Like, like I think like the reading the second half as a description fits cleanest into the second translation, or refreshes as well. Yeah. Okay. Ariel.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. One is all right, well, I guess like what's the consequence of either half? I don't know if we asked that already.
Yeah, I also don't know if we asked that already. We asked what's the practical decision-making advice. I'll just add here, what are the benefits and consequences of each?
And also, can you go back to the pasuk? Yeah. And also, is this true?
Okay. Let's
Meaning, like,
here.
I guess what I mean by I'm sure there are people who act like this in both groups, but like, is this like a common theme, or is this?
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and go with Sadigon's approach here, of which we talked about in the past, that the Yesh psukim that start off with Yesh, are talking about rare cases, or like not common cases. So it's saying like there are, in certain cases, there are people like this. So that is a question we can ask though, which is like, I guess, how common is this? Which I guess is kind of, you know what? Actually, we have too many questions. No, I'm gonna fold this under tomorrow's question. Um, how like common of an occurrence is this?
I guess my I don't know if that's really getting to the point of my question. My,
Yeah.
my, my question really is I know I asked it, but not really what I'm getting at. My question really is if I see someone if I see someone okay, maybe it is my question, but if I see someone who is acting this way, should I automatically assume that he does is poor or wealthy? Like, or meaning should I is that the question? Is that the same question?
I think it is a combination of like, I think we have to answer the scenario question here, and then see. I think it's partially it is a question of like, if this is describing a hyper particular scenario, then that might answer your question, but this might also just be the normal Mishlei question of like, does this always come about or does it not always come about, So I think the question, your question, let's put it this way, your question is stemming from a really good intuition, but I think we'll get it covered with the questions that we're answering here.
Okay, fine. And the other question is like, what's the subject of this pasuk?
Yeah. Okay, so what is the subject of this pasuk? Yeah. Okay, Tamar.
I think this is a factual question, not a write-down question, but I was just wondering if the word hone has any like connotations that are known. Like, for example, if it said like, I don't know, kesef, we would think that probably is more literal.
I think hone just means like a lot of money. I'm gonna click on the BDB and see what the BDB says. BDB says wealth or sufficiency, wealth with high value or price, sufficiency or enough. Let's see if this helps us. No. Oh yeah, that's later on in Mishlei. Yeah, enough.
I was just wondering if there was going to be like a clue from the words about what might be literal.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question. I think it just means like a lot. Like the Targum had said sagi, which means like also means like enough. Yeah, Rivki?
Yeah, so two things. Number one is for some reason I don't really remember like what you were referencing with Sadigon and Yesh. Can you just quickly go over that?
In fact, I want to read it inside Yugon because it is possible that that we encountered it recently in my morning shiur, and we haven't done it here. So this is inside Yugon's intro, and he classifies the pasukim in Mishlei. This is like much later in his intro, and I forgot how many categories he says, but one of them is called Yesh. Let's see, like a Rishon, okay. If anyone sees the word yesh. Oh no, I think this is still further on.
Control F.
I don't think you can control F on this.
I see the word yesh, but I feel like that doesn't mean glushad. Oh, yesh misasher.
Oh yeah. Yeah, here we go. Thank you. This is it. Yeah. Where does it start though? Okay, Hamishi. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in. Hachamishi davar she'amru b'lashon klali v'inyano miyuchad. So there's certain psukim that are expressed in a universal language or like a generic or general, categorical language, but it's the subject is really very specific. Amru, as it says, mivarech re'ehu b'kol gadol. So that's pasuk. That's 93. That is pasuk 27:14. Let me show you this pasuk here. 27:14. Mivarech re'ehu b'kol gadol b'boker hashkim klala techashiv lo. One. So if you just read it, it would be one who blesses his fellow in a loud voice in the morning, in the early morning. It will be considered a curse for him. Okay, so it's written as though this is a universal principle. Okay, however, Sadigon explains, he says, Upirusho, the meaning is Yish hamavarech es re'ehu b'kol gadol b'boker b'hashkama b'hilo be'enav nechshavas l'gidufin. That there is a case where a person blesses his fellow in a loud voice early in the morning, and it will be considered in his eyes like an insult, klomar belibo, meaning in his heart. V'yezed v'domav ke'ena psukim shekasu b'tchilas and yesh. This and the ones similar to it are like the psukim that are written at the beginning, yesh, kagon, yesh mefazer. This might be the one that we did in the morning. Oh no, we did this in our shiur, but probably like a year ago. 11:14, which is no, that was not 11:14. What was it? 11:24. 11:24. Yesh mefazer v'nosaf od v'chosef miyosh. Oh, I remember this. This is one of the few psukim I remember the idea for. Yesh mefazer v'nosaf od v'chosef miyosher ach l'machzor. There's someone who like scatters his money and gathers more, but one who withholds from uprightness is only for loss. And then he says, yesh misasher. Okay, and then he gives our pasuk. So in other words, it is a case where it's a pasuk. So in other words, the category is there are certain psukim in Mishlei that are stated as if they're universals, but is really talking about a specific case. And then the yesh psukim are definitely talking about a specific case, not universal. Now, it might be that that going back to Ariel's question, it might be that the thing it's saying about the specific case is always true, but I just don't think that this case is a very common case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. And then, so my actual question was, and I'm not sure if this would be included, and I think it was like number 9, but I'm just wondering, the people, I guess it could be on all of the translations, the person that's in each scenario, like the person that makes themselves rich or poor,
yeah,
is it like their own mindset that the pasuk is describing, or is it people that are observing them that are thinking the second half of each?
So, to me, it seems like that's going to come down into how you, whether you take translation 2 or you take Hirsch, you know, or you take one physically or figuratively, you know. So I think that could fit into either one. Yeah. Okay, so let me copy and paste these many questions into the chat. And oopsies, I accidentally just dragged the whole screen. Okay, there's 1 through 6. And then let's see if we can get all this in one shot. Maybe not. Oh, it's too long. Let's see if we can do it without Isaiah's stylistic question. Nope, still too long. Okay. We'll just split it in half at this point. Okay, so here's, 7 through 9, and here is 10 through the end. Okay, and now it is thinking time, and as usual, when we have these distinct different translations, when you say your idea, just preface it by telling me which translation you're going off of, or if it's multiple ones, then which one. Let's take a minute to think. Now, I'm going to give you another piece of advice as well, which is I think that the most important question here in terms of like an anchor is which translation, but then also what is the practical decision making advice, and who's the audience? You know, there's going to be read very differently if it's telling you to do this or to not do this, or it's saying there are people like this, and then like it's expecting you to like figure out what to do with that. Okay, let's start with Rifki.
Okay, so honestly, I would like to have an idea for the first translation, but it wasn't coming to me. Like there's just something.
Okay.
So what I was thinking was on Rav Hirsch.
Okay.
And it really could be because of the parsha, but I was thinking about like your mindset of, I guess, like how you treat money, and like just not just money, but like physical things in the world.
Uh-huh.
So I was basically thinking that there's a person who considers themselves rich. It has nothing. I'm just reading in my head. Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically that I think it all depends on like what your attitude toward money is, and that you could be like physically rich and you could have a lot of materialistic things, but obviously if you don't really recognize like where it's coming from, and I'm not saying like the pasuk is only speaking about Hashem, but like just recognizing that there are forces beyond your control, that it's not all like up to you at the end of it. You have like your own abilities that you put into whatever it is that you're making money with, but also recognizing that like at the end of the day, Hashem has control over the world, and like if he quote unquote wanted you to be rich, then you would be, and if he didn't want you to be, then you wouldn't. And I think like it also is dependent on what point you are at, where you are in your life, because I think that depending on your mindset, it could change. So you could have, because I think we spoke about like, could you be the same person at different points in your life? So I think you could be. Like you could start out like not really recognizing where your wealth is coming from, and like through, let's say, giving tzedakah, then you recognize where it's really coming from. And the example I was thinking with this specific idea was really about Yosef, that he was even like, you know, in obviously such like horrendous conditions, but he still had this like mindset that Hashem was with him. And therefore we know that even other people started recognizing, wow, like everything that Yosef does. And it was the same thing with Yaakov. And that's why Lavan didn't want him to leave. So yeah.
Okay. So I hear the general thrust of what you're saying. I don't know if I'm lacking clarity, or if you are saying several different ideas. Okay, but let me try to state the unifying thing, which is that like which is that so this pasuk is telling us that true wealth and poverty aren't measured by the amount of money in your bank account, okay, but are determined by the way you relate to that money, okay? So then you're giving several possibilities. So I'm going to use the phrase for example, even though I know you're not using it as an example, but I think there are multiple ways you could go here. So for example, if you have a lot of money, but like you don't recognize, it's that your wealth is dependent on Hashem, then you don't really. I'm going to use this. You don't really have wealth. Now, I don't know if did you explain that? Yeah, can you explain that again?
I don't think I did, but I can try.
Yeah, sure.
So I think like at the end of the day, really what I was thinking was that you could have like all the money in the world, but if your mindset is false or is wrong about what you have, then it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, like you're going to die, your money is going to go who knows where. Like we know that from Kohelet, and that it's not really going to be a beneficial thing for you. But if you have that amount of money, the same amount of money, but you have a positive mindset and you recognize that it's coming from Hashem, then like, first of all, like it will be beneficial for you within your life. But even when you die, like that's really what matters, because you had a positive mindset, and you'll obviously have like I guess like more schus or whatever you want to say.
Okay, so that's a clearer idea, especially once you mentioned Koheles. So I'm going to go ahead and say, if you have a lot of money but you don't recognize the true value and proper use of the wealth, so then you don't really have the wealth because your relationship to it is rooted in fantasy. Okay. And then in contrast, if you are poor, well, now this is where it gets difficult, right? Because the misasher is talking about someone who considers himself rich because he has a lot of money, but in reality, he doesn't have anything. Would the second half then have to be he considers himself poor? See, because considering himself poor in the same way that this guy considers himself rich, it would seem to be that if he truly has real wealth, maybe again, it was, I guess, according to you, then it would be saying that if you consider yourself poor, then the pasuk is telling you that there is the capacity that you have real wealth, depending on like how you relate to what you have. In other words, like my problem is like this guy, the way you're going, then the guy in the first half of the pasuk has a mistake in his mind, and the pasuk is informing him of the reality. So I think the second half, it's also like, if you think you're poor, then the pasuk is informing you that you really do, or at least can, have a lot of wealth if you recognize the true value of what you have. Like, I'll give you an example of that. Like, I don't have the statistics at my fingertips, or maybe I do. No, I don't. Never mind. That like, they always have these things about the people who are in third world countries, not all third world countries, obviously, but like there are people who are in third world countries who don't have a lot of the luxuries and like even the basic things that we do, but like they rank themselves as very happy, or let's say like if you want another type of example, you have like, Buddhist monks who will have like broken their attachment to like material possessions, and certainly someone who is, let's say like, like Yaakov Avinu in, I gave a shiur on this once. I forgot what parsha it's in. When he's talking to Hashem and he says, as long as you give me, lechem lechol ubegad lilbosh, if you just give me like bread to eat and a garment to wear, and you see from that, I think Avram and Rambam makes the point, you see from that like, he we consider our necessities like a lot more than that, and he's saying like, as long as I have that, like that's just the practical thing. Like he doesn't even mention shelter, I guess because it's in the Mediterranean climate or whatever. But like, so he's saying that like that's all he needs. So you can have, because he realizes what the true place of wealth is, and so he's gonna like truly value what it is that he has and realize he has enough, Yeah. So I think this is a good approach. I think there are probably a lot of subtle different directions you could take within this approach. But I think that's a good, good approach to take for now. Okay, good. All right, anyone have anything they want to add to Rifki's or any similar thing to Rifki's? A lot of people lined up here. Yeah. Okay, so let's go with my dad next.
Okay, so I'm working with the second translation.
Okay.
And the message is, be careful what you look at. It may not be obvious. People who invested with Bernie Madoff thought he had a lot of money. Did he have nothing? He had less than nothing. He had more debt than he had possessions.
Right.
And this guy who recently got busted for cryptocurrency also appeared to be very wealthy.
Right.
So, and then on the other
SBF. I think that's the guy you're talking about, Samuel Bankman-Fried. The guy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And then on the other end of it, there's one of the famous investors. He's an elderly guy now, made trillions and trillions of dollars, in the stock market. But he still lives in a 2-bedroom home, and he drives the 1985 Camaro, and he certainly appears poor. There was another example that I was watching a documentary once, and they were studying these people that stand at the highway on-ramp with the cardboard sign about how poor they are. They need money.
Yeah.
And followed one of these women, and she went home after her morning shift at the on-ramp and dressed in nice clothes and had a nice car and was living. So it may seem obvious, but then be careful.
Okay, good. All right. So this is a warning against being taken in by appearances. Okay. There are people who pose as wealthy, and may convince you of their wealth and success, but then take advantage of you, or you might simply be duped by them, even if they're not sinister, right? Like, for example, it could be someone who is just really, really, really irresponsible financially, and they buy a big house and an expensive sports car. They're not trying to trick you necessarily. They just want that image of wealth. And then you, let's say, assume that they're successful, so you take their advice or something like that, Yeah. So that is for the first half. So the second half is likewise, there are people who actually do have a lot of money, but they appear poor. Now, the example you gave of a Warren Buffett type figure, yeah, right. So that one is true, but I feel like that's not really a warning, or at least we have to translate it to a warning. So what would the warning be? What would be the practical application of knowing if Mishlei is talking to the bystander or the onlooker? What would be the need to tell him this? Yeah, Alex, do you want to answer that?
I don't have an answer off the top.
Yeah, I had a very similar explanation when I raised my hand.
Sure.
Process for the first and second half were just not even necessarily big signifiers of wealth, like houses and stuff.
Yeah.
But on a micro level, the way you look, there are a lot of very rich people dressed in a simple t-shirt, and you would think they're not well off, versus the kind of people who are poor, but they'll save their money to buy the knockoff designer and have that outward fire of wealth. So it's to me, it came off very much like a warning of appearances are not always accurate, and you should make assumptions about people based off of outer things.
Okay, right. So I think that's a good example as well. Are you answering the question about what's the practical? I understand if they look wealthy, you might make bad decisions in your interactions with them. It's harder to see if they look poor that you'll make bad decisions. So that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, Tamar?
Yeah, I don't have this super spelled out, but I think there is whether or not this is itself justified, I think people sort of treat wealthy people as influential and poor people as not influential.
Right.
And I think that you might look at someone who looks poor and treat them as not influential, and that could be a mistake.
Okay, and treat them accordingly. So, for example, view them as not influential, or like disparage them. Yeah, Isaiah, do you have another example?
Well, this is not like the Warren Buffett type case, but the other case is like someone who's dressed poor on the side of the highway, but really they make a stable amount of
Oh,
money.
that's right. I forgot that my dad said that. Yeah.
Like that's like, you're giving them tzedakah, but it's really taking your money. Like
Yeah,
they don't
right.
need tzedakah.
Right. That's good. Right. So like the example of this would be like, again, it's an unfortunate example. I have no idea how common this is. I just remember the first time I heard about this, I was scandalized that there are like, these people who there's the people who send the kids to like expensive Jewish day schools and like rely on tuition assistance, but like are taking like these really expensive luxury vacations, so they're in one of the two halves of the pasuk, right? Either they're pretending to be rich and living beyond their means, but they're actually poor and that's why they need financial assistance, or they're like tricking the schools into thinking that they need the financial assistance, and they're actually like they're actually rich. Yeah. Okay. Were there any other fireworks party symbols that I missed for this approach? I think it's a good approach. Okay, good. Definitely one of the meforshim, if not more, says this. So we'll definitely have to be on the lookout. I have a feeling, by the way, that this is going to be tonight's shiur is going to be one where we all come up with ideas and then we just go and find out which of the meforshim says whose idea. Yeah. Okay, tomorrow you're up.
Okay, mine was really very similar, but I have like some questions on it now, I guess.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so first of all, I guess one thing I guess I wanted to maybe articulate was that I think that just like kind of with the yesh thing, that just the existence here is enough to cause you to be careful. Like it doesn't even exactly matter how common it is.
Yeah.
But you should just not be sure because
there is a case like this. Yeah, that's a great okay. What I like about that is that there are yesh psukim. There are yesh psukim where like it's just telling you that there's a corner case. Here, though, you're saying that it's actually giving you a reason why we should know that it's a corner case, which is that you should be aware that there are people like this. Okay, so the yesh framing is not only telling you that there are rare cases like this, but that because there are rare cases like this, you should be on guard. So for example, I mean, I don't know what the statistics are in this either, but like probably statistically, most people who take investment money are not crooks. Like they're probably people who actually think that they have a way to make money, but there are crooks. And so whenever you are, investing your money, like you should be very, very careful to check out, the who this person is. I mean, I don't know if this is stretching the practical application too far, but like one of the things that makes me extremely paranoid, even though Chase is very good, Chase Bank, is like whenever you get any sort of like bank communication, there's always like a paranoia of like, is this a scam? And the thing I love about Chase is you can always just like call the number on the back of the thing and like ask them to verify it. And I think there was one time, I didn't fall for it, but there was one time where like there was some sketchy, I think it was a text that I got. And I think this was early on. This is like when these things first started happening. And like, I almost fell for it because it looked official, but so that's not someone pretending to be a rich person, but that's pretending to be like a rich institution. So, maybe that could fall that could fall into this category. Yeah, Tamara, you had questions, you said.
Yeah, I guess my question is like it's more like I want to push the idea a little bit further, which is like, what is the appropriate way to treat someone that is rich or poor? Like, what is the appropriate thing that you're supposed to not do here because you don't know if they're really rich or poor?
Right. So I'll give you an example just based on, I mean, I think there are probably lots of answers to that, but I do remember there was a pasuk we did a year or two ago that said that wealthy people are, hold on, let me say it. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. Like, I'll give you an example. I don't remember the exact pasuk that we did, but like there are people who are wealthy, and this is not true of every wealthy person, but wealthy people often have a big ego because they take pride, they take pride in their wealth. and they attribute it to their own greatness. And wealthy people also view themselves as influential, whether they are or not, and they're used to getting their way, or they might think that they could buy their way out of certain situations, or they might think that like they are superior in other qualities when they really don't have that. Let's say like, board members of various organizations who donate a lot will think that they know the ins and outs of what they're donating to when they might just be a layperson, So I think there are just a whole host of things that if you think that this person, if this person really is wealthy, even though they're not like acting that way, then like you might misstep,
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Okay, good. That was good observations. Yeah, Ariel.
Yeah, so I wanna. It's funny. I'm still debating whether I want to go with the first translation or the second translation.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure, but it's one of those two. I want to say that I think that it's kind of like one's relationship with wealth or money or whatever. I think that that and I'm kind of getting this from Rashi on that on Avram Avinu, like he wants a son and that's everything for him.
Right. Yeah.
Like he like that, like having a son was for him, that was everything. So I think that one can view having if one presents himself as having all this wealth, in reality it's possible that he just has nothing behind all of that, because he's missing a fundamental point in meaning it's just like a skin. It's there's really no substance to it. There's really nothing. So I think when someone presents himself, as having all this wealth, I think the bystander should view it as like, look, just because he has all these things doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything behind it. It's possible he has a very, a negative outlook on it, or how he's running his life or whatever it is, and that's really worthless. There's no amount of money that's going to, or wealth or money or whatever it is to create substance behind the scenes.
Right.
If he doesn't have the proper mindset towards it.
Right. So this is one of the other directions that I thought Rifki was going in, which is.
Yeah, I know. I thought about intervening, but I wasn't sure where she was going. So
yeah, sure. So people who make a lot of money, but because they relate to that money incorrectly. So for example, like they just want more, okay, then even in their minds they don't have anything, right? Like meaning like they're not happy with what they have, right? They're not happy with what they have. And then conversely, you want to say the other half?
Yeah, conversely, someone who has no money,
yeah,
maybe for him having no money, he's in a, like that's a good thing for him.
Okay.
And he recognizes the true.
So I'm gonna stop you there. I'm gonna point out a subtlety in the pasuk, but I think this could help you. So making himself rich, like I think we can get that because this is a guy who, let's say, like builds up his wealth. But this is not saying someone who is poor. It's saying someone who makes himself poor.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's when he makes himself. What does it mean? He's making himself.
Yeah. What does he mean? What does it mean?
I think it means that he is, he's really doing it to himself in terms of his own framework of, how he's viewing his situation or his.
I think you're not consistent with your own approach right now. Let me just guide you.
I'm not understanding the question.
Mis Asher, you're learning that means the money in his bank account, right?
I'm saying yeah, fine, sure. Like, okay.
Well, I thought you were saying that he makes himself wealthy, meaning he actually gets a lot of money, but it's not worth anything to him. Like who says this? Haman says this, right? Koze enenu shoveli. All of this wealth that I have is not worth anything because Mordecai is not bowing down to me, right? That would be a real case. So I thought you were taking the first half as describing the objective facts, and then the second half is the evaluation that this guy really in his mind has nothing. That's not, you're not telling me that's not how you're taking it.
I don't know if it matters how
No,
much
you can't be wishy-washy with this. There are multiple good avenues here, but I'm saying like you have to don't just like gloss over the pasuk. You have to tell me what are you learning as the reality, and what are you learning as the mentality, and how are you reading it. Otherwise,
okay, fine. Okay, he has money in the bank account. It doesn't matter. My point is, fine, let's go with that one. He doesn't have money. He has money in the bank account, but he can make himself poor by not using for appropriate means or for whatever, if he has a negative mindset towards it.
And he has lots of money.
Yeah, because having money doesn't necessarily create substance within his outlook on life.
Now you're making your idea messy. Okay.
No, I don't know what you mean.
No. Okay, so the first half is very clean, right? You got a guy who, like, let's say you got a guy who just, he's raised in America and he thinks, okay, wealth equals happiness, and he just focuses on just getting millions and millions of dollars, right?
Okay.
But in reality, because he's, let's say, like, he's a Haman, or he's always like looking towards other people, or he always wants more, so then he's never going to be happy. So the pasuk saying he really has nothing.
Yeah, that's the negative mindset. Yeah.
Okay. But now you got a guy who's misroshesh, who makes himself poor. Now, what are you saying that means?
I'm saying he makes himself poor.
And in order to make this parallel, you're saying that he makes himself poor, like, in terms of dollars. Because that's what the yesh misasher is.
Yeah, I don't know. I was trying to say that it's not about the it's about the proper mindset.
I know that's what you're saying the idea of the pasuk is, Ariel, but I'm saying, like, you got to read the pasuk in a way that makes sense.
All right, I don't know.
You want me to give you a way that makes sense? You're like, if you I'm trying to save your soul here methodologically, okay? Like, you're saying a good idea, but because you're allowing yourself to be sloppy for the second half, then it's not coming to fruition. And I think do you see the problem?
Explain the problem one more time, because I thought
the problem is like this, okay? I'm going to spell this out here, okay?
Go for it.
This is translation, okay? There is a person who objectively has, makes himself wealthy, okay? But because he relates to the money incorrectly, it is worth nothing to him. Okay? Now, when I ask you what the second half is saying, you just say, money doesn't really matter, the amount doesn't really matter. And I'm trying to pin you down. What does it mean he makes himself poor? And if you want to make this parallel, which this pasuk is clearly said to be parallel, you're going to have to say he makes himself poor objectively. Okay? But there is one who makes himself poor, like, objectively in dollars. Okay? And I'm asking you what that case is. And I think you have a good idea. That's just like swimming around the fishing hook that's in the in the Mishlei waters here.
I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Okay, can anyone think of an example where, like, he makes himself poor, he chooses to learn kollel? I don't know what FT means, knowing that he doesn't have rich in-laws to help him out.
Full time.
Okay, that's one route you can take. Okay, right? Is that he makes himself poor in terms of the way he uses his money, right? In other words, he uses his money for some objectively worthwhile purpose. Okay. And he really has wealth because he actually, like, appreciates the value of money. Okay. That would be an approach more like Rivki's. Okay. I was expecting you, Ariel.
He's just not stupid with his money. I'm not really sure what your question is. He uses it conservatively for the right reasons. Like, I don't know.
How's he making himself poor, though? Making yourself poor means you were rich and you became poor. So Noah's example, like, is an example of that, because you have a person who, like, well, let's say, like, they decide to go into a field where they're gonna not be making any money, and their bank account's gonna go down.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I have to change my idea, because that's not what I want to say. I don't want to pin myself down to that, because I don't know if that really.
Okay, so let me give you an idea. Okay, there's one who makes himself poor. Okay, so I would say there are people who okay, I expect you to say this because I think a lot of the people who you read about are like this. Okay, who know. In fact, I've heard you say this. Who know that,
I don't know,
that you have to you have to spend money to lose money to make money. You have to spend money to make money, right? Okay. Or let's say there are people who will be intent on like they're actually, try to envision can you envision a type of person who can lose a lot of money and still view himself as being rich?
That's what you mean?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Meaning like you could, meaning you fail forward, meaning you could lose
that. Yeah. See, I know you have all these things in you that you want to say. Yeah, right.
Yeah, fine. But that's not what I was trying to say, though.
Okay, no. It's not what you're trying to say, but I'm trying to say, I don't care what you say as long as it's parallel. You have to be consistent in your approach.
Okay, fine. Fine. He loses a lot of money, but he picks himself up and he pushes through.
No, so I'd say like this. I'll give you a go. There are people who lose a lot of money, okay, but either because they relate to the money in the right way, okay. So for example, okay, like they know that money is that what really matters is your, like, I don't know, your commitment to Torah, okay, or even, and this is the one I thought you were gonna say, or even that as long as you are like learning something from the losses, then you've actually won, right? In other words, if you make a decision, okay, and it doesn't turn out well, and then you learn a lesson from that about how to be a better businessman, that is a great investment. Like, you're no one is going to succeed all the time, but it's the person who beats himself up because he loses money is just missing the point. The whole point is like to actually like learn from what you're doing, Right. But the main point I want you to take away from this, though, the main point I want you to take away is don't be sloppy in your thinking. And if the pasuk is telling you I'm parallel, then interpret the pasuk in a parallel manner.
Yeah, it's not. I'll be honest. This is not my idea. You should switch my name to your name. I have to think it through because this isn't what I was trying to say at all.
Okay.
All
right. So you'll think it through. All right, but the main thing is the methodology. This is more.
Yeah. I agree. I was stuck on the methodology because I was trying to figure how fit in with the idea that I really wanted to say, but like that's not my idea.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Avital, you're up.
Okay, so
can I add to this one?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. I didn't see the thing. Yeah.
So I found another answer for why it's like makes himself poor is like the Stoics come to mind, Stoic philosophers who like would go with like just bread and whatever for a few days.
Right.
And that like in order maybe someone would make themselves poor in order so that way they could be rich because they'll relate to their money properly. Right. Like it's going against the Hava, meaning that you could have wealth and still relate to it properly.
Okay, good. That's a good example as well. And I'm going to go ahead and use something that we learned in Pirkei Avos instead, which is that monk mode. There are, this is for the second half, there are people who voluntarily impoverish themselves in a manner of, so what we learned in Pirkei Avos is precious, right? Is detachment, like detaching yourself from worldly possessions. Detachment from worldly possessions. I know we had a machlokas. This is in our Thursday night Pirkei Avos here, and this was last year. About like whether this is whether there's like a positive. No, I forgot how we put it. Whatever. In order to perfect themselves, in various ways. Yeah, that's a good example. Right. That would answer my methodology question of like, why would you impoverish yourself? I understand why you would make lots of money. Why would you impoverish themselves? And I like this idea better because this is an intentional impoverishment of the self. Yeah. Good. All right. Sorry, Avital, you're up.
Okay, so mine might be a little bit similar to what Ayala just said.
Yeah.
But I was kind of thinking of it sort of like between like Shark Tank style and like also what I hear like just from speaking to people who have different jobs.
Yeah.
And one thing is that like there are some people who they'll work for really good companies or whatever it is, but like at the end of the day, whether it means that they're like I don't know, like doing something that's really bad for whether it's like the environment, the world, whatever it is that they're doing. Really it's not turning out anything, even if they're like investing everything they have and they're becoming wealthy, like they're really not doing good things. Versus on the opposite side, like somebody who has like an idea that could really like, whether it's ultimately change things on a larger scale or it's something that they truly like believe in, that even like you have these people going on Shark Tank who are like, don't have the greatest numbers, but like they believe so much in their product that they're willing to like come at it from this perspective of like, I'm going to give it everything I got because like I really believe in this, whether it's like a product or an idea or something like that. And that in the end, I wanted to ask you, like, is share generally used as like more than like the hon rav? Like I wasn't sure which one.
I don't even know. I'm not. Yeah, I think I've never seen the word in Tanakh Hebrew of like like. Well, never mind. Sorry. No, there's the word osher, but that doesn't mean like extreme wealth. I don't think. I don't think. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have enough to answer that question.
So I was just gonna say, like, I was kind of reading the second one just because of the word like rav, like a lot. I feel like that we see that with like really increasing. So like even though like you might really be poor from it, whether it's because it has like larger effects than like just yourself. Like here it's like, okay, you're becoming poor, but there's so much more like greatness and wealth associated. Or like whether it's like for the world or even if it's just
I like this idea. This is a new approach, which is that the subject of this pasuk is about individual like net worth versus I guess the relationship is about the relationship between individual net worth and objective value to the world, right? Is that what you're saying? Meaning that you can have someone who is making a lot of money, but like adding absolutely no value to society, right? Yeah, okay. I'm gonna bring support for your pasuk or your idea in a second. Uh, uh, or you can have someone who like impoverishes themselves for a cause, like in that will benefit everyone, even if they have to go to like suffer for like championing that idea. An example of this, I read over the cabin, I read the Elon Musk biography, and one of the examples of this is like he very nearly like went bankrupt from Tesla, and he really believed in in electric cars, because electric cars, I mean, he believed in electric cars because his ultimate goal is to get everyone to Mars, for the sake, but that's also for the sake of the planet, like, but also electric cars, knowing that this is like good for the earth and everything like that. And I'm sure you can find tons of examples of people who like, championed ideas that were extremely unpopular and lost them a lot of money, and they had to like sell, mortgage their house and everything like that, but they did it for a good cause. In fact, I know an example of this. Let's just say that actually no, I don't know if it's public, so I'm not gonna say. Okay, anyway, yeah, Alex.
Even necessarily think you need to go that far, because there are plenty of people that invest their own personal money and wealth into projects, right? So like, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't
I think the only reason that I would say it's different is because I think there's a certain level where the decision maker is relating to it as an investment, and then there is a certain type of thing where you're like, I will give up everything I have for this, and it's like a sacrifice, and it's a sacrifice which you do hope pays off, but you're not relating to it as an investment. It's like, even if I lose everything, like this is this is worth it.
I make like a tiny just like adjustment.
Sure.
Just in terms of like what you were saying, objective value to the world, like I also don't think it has to be like as big as the whole world, and I think you probably meant this anyway, but like just something bigger than the person themselves, or even let's say even if it affects the person themselves, let's say it affects them alone, but like it's their like goodness of mind, that it's about more than, I guess, like just the money or the wealth, that like they end up with much more than they did before. And then also for the second part, impoverishes themselves for a cause also, or like an idea, or like anything like that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, like a product or something.
Yeah, I think the reason why, and I was biased because I looked at the psukim before and after. I think I did. Yeah, I think because the last two psukim were talking about a tzaddik and a rasha, and the next one is talking about wealth, but not about tzaddik or a rasha. And so I was thinking that like in the perspective of Mishleic tzaddik, like in terms of the system. But you are right, that it doesn't have to be for all of society or the world. Yeah. Okay, good idea. Okay. Yeah, David, you want to add?
Yeah, I think also if I'm taking what Avital's saying correctly, insofar as like evaluating the person versus evaluating the money that they produced, I think if this is like you could take it practically as someone who's looking to now buddy up or partner with someone who's in one of these, I think what you were saying, like the Shark Tank idea.
Yeah.
That then like through that a person who cares about what they're actually like going for ultimately, they'll be there and stick with you the whole time.
That's
I think
true.
they'll be more successful and they'll actually be there for you. For someone who's just there for the money, the moment that things don't go well, they will have taken your money and just totally throw you under the bus. So
Yeah.
I think just good so far as like investing in the person, not investing in their money. In a way, I think that will then like create like the best relationship going forward. And that's like the type of person you want to be working with.
Okay, that's good. So this is practical advice for what to look for in who you partner with. Yeah, I have a funny example of this. I've been slowly making my way through Johnny's most recent video with the 50 tips from Arcane writers about the show Arcane, and I saw a clip by the Arcane writers where they were saying how like there were points when it was looking like it was going to be impossible to do this, and they were going to have to like give everything up, and so the interviewer said like why did you keep at it, and they said because we believed in this so much, we just knew this has to exist, and we have to make this exist, and like the people who are like that committed, who are not thinking about themselves, they know that they need to bring this thing into the world. Like that person is going to be dedicated no matter what. And again, I realize that that's about a show, and like that's not as substantive as someone who's like trying to cure cancer. But like I think in terms of your point, David, then it's going to hold true in the same way. Like person who has an artistic vision also will do this. Yeah. Okay, Isaiah.
Okay, so I think this pasuk is giving you a financial advice.
Okay.
So there's a case of people where they get rich very quickly, but because they have no like financial savvy, or they don't have like ideas about how to use wealth.
Yeah.
So then it's destined that they're going to lose the wealth.
Okay,
like,
good.
Let's say someone wins the lottery, but they've never had money in their life, and so they don't know what to do with it. So then like they're going to spend it all, and like that's just that person is going to do that because they don't know how to have that money.
Yeah.
Whereas like there is a case, and I think you mentioned this earlier when you were talking to Ariel, that like you can spend money, but the point of spending that money is to make more money, like to invest money. So I think that that's someone who impoverishes himself, but really that plan is a plan of wealth, and so there's like an abundance of wealth in doing that. Yeah, so I think that it's financial advice.
Okay, hold on a second. Oh, sorry, I actually just transitioned into, I thought I was typing the summary. Who impoverishes himself but ends up with lots of money. Yeah, so I was waiting for this other translation that which I think is it's 1B. It's not like a completely different translation. There's one who makes himself rich but ends up losing everything, and there's someone who impoverishes himself but ends up with lots of money. So there are people who get rich quickly but lose it all due to mismanagement. Okay, so for example, like lottery winners or like professional athletes. Yeah. Athletes, I guess, not all of them obviously, but certain ones. And there are people who become poor through strategic investment and end up making a lot, right? So so this is going with the interpretation that the second half is the good decision and the first half is the bad decision, right? So like it's saying like, don't be like or partner with the first guy, but you should be or partner with the second. Yeah. So it's fine. I should put the financial advice thing. This is financial advice. Okay, good. Yeah, I like this reading because, and this is also why when I was, when we were going through Ariel's, that I think, we're going to see a lot of the meforshim do take a lot of other directions of like, this is talking about a tzaddik and this is talking about like using money in the right way. The most conservative reading of the pasuk is just talking about money, So like, I think that's one advantage to Isaiah's idea. And that's the strength there.
I do think there's something to me like a little weird about reading it this way. Yeah. Is like, why is it reflexive? Because like, especially the person who's getting rich, it's like they're not necessarily making themselves rich. It kind of seems like it has to be that they sort of became rich.
Right. So I think I'm going to go out on a limb here and make something up, which is that, the translation to the Meiri said the reason why the reflexive can mean acting as rich is because you're taking an accidental feature and you're treating it as the essence. So I wonder if the reflexive can ever be used for like sudden change, like misasher is like you suddenly become rich or you suddenly become poor, and then that would fit in. I don't know for sure though. I also want to say that this, I don't know if you did this intentionally, but this answers your question about why it only says yesh in the beginning and not in the second one, because I do think that the sudden wealth is more rare than the person who like, invests and like, gives up stuff in order to make more money.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so that is a good nuance. Okay, Tamar, last one before we go to the meforshim.
Okay, so I want to do also financial advice.
Sorry, Ariel. Sorry, I didn't see Ariel's hand was up also. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Financial advice from translation 1a.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is 100% a legitimate reading of this translation, but I what I want to say is that ein kol means like there's no money around. Like I want to say it's like someone who becomes rich in like the Great Depression or something.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
And then the other one is like maybe someone becomes poor when when times are good, let's say.
Okay.
There's a lot of money floating around, but they're not making it. They're becoming poor.
Okay.
And I mean, in terms of advice, like practical advice, I guess you should keep an open mind that these are possibilities. You shouldn't just be like, oh, I'm graduating into a good job market, it's going to be fine, or things like that. Or maybe the other way, you shouldn't be like, there's no opportunities for me.
Okay,
so
that's
I just better give up,
Okay, good. This is practical advice to not allow your prospects to be overly optimistic or pessimistic based on what's going on in the environment. Yeah, that's really good advice. Yeah, I feel like if, obviously there are also, unjust ways to make a lot of money when there's no money around. And there are like, I'm sure you can find converse as well, but that's really, really good. It's a great reading of the pasuk. That also accounts for the weird phraseology, the ein kol. I do like, the ein kol does sound like there is nothing, there is no wealth out there. I like that. Okay, good. Ariel.
All right, I'm gonna try.
Okay.
I actually have two ideas. One talking about a tzaddik, but I'm gonna leave that on the back burner for a second. Okay. Okay, so I want to start with the second half of the puzzle. I'm just trying to make it as clear as possible.
Okay.
So I'm talking, the audience is the bystander, okay? And when the puzzle says one who makes himself seem poor but has a lot of wealth, I want to say that it's all perception, okay? Yeah. When someone makes himself seem poor, it doesn't matter how much money he has in the bank account. It's not really relevant, right?
You're saying seem poor to others?
What?
You're making himself seem poor to others or to himself?
To others.
Okay, yeah.
Or that's just how he lives life, because it just means that he's living a modest lifestyle, okay? Yeah. And he doesn't need to present himself in any other way, because what he truly values is what's behind the scenes, and that could be his family, that could be his learning, that could be, I don't know, other stuff. But the point is that, just because someone's poor doesn't mean he doesn't have wealth that may be defined as other things.
Yeah. Okay, good. I like that.
That's happiness, okay?
Yeah.
Right. Now the first half of the pasuk is saying that, when if someone presents himself as being wealthy, okay, fine. He's presenting himself as being wealthy, but the fact that he's presenting himself as being wealthy, I think that's kind of like I think that's kind of like a testament to what they value, and they value that wealth or whatever it is. But in reality, and I think this is kind of similar to something, but I don't want it to be exact. I think that there's a misrepresentation of values, and the bystander shouldn't view that as what's ideal.
Okay. Yeah. So in other words, so what would you say the subject of the pasuk is? I do like this approach better.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds to me, the way I'm understanding it is like you can tell a lot about a person's values by how much they care about their socioeconomic image. Economic.
Yeah, exactly.
Image. Yeah. Right. So if a person, is living a modest lifestyle and they have a lot of money, or they don't have a lot of money, it doesn't change how they present themselves. So it shows that just doesn't matter to them, and their value lies elsewhere. And someone who's like always trying to look rich, is like clearly saying like, I think that this is very important, and I somehow feel inferior or feel like I'm losing something if I don't have that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
You
good.
Interpretation?
What was it? Yeah, sure, really quickly, but I want to go to the meforshim.
All right, very quickly. Yeah. So I think this actually may fall in under another idea, but I think maybe someone who makes himself seem poor but has a lot of wealth. I think it's talking about a modest individual who's like a Talmid Chacham, meaning like he doesn't want to like share. Well, it's not that he doesn't want to share. It's just like he's very humble and like what he knows, and he's going to keep to himself. And like like as I remember there's a guy in Yeshiva Migdal, like he would pretend, not pretend, but like he would make it seem like whatever, like I'm not a big guy or whatever.
Yeah.
So like I just knew I had to squeeze a lot of stuff out of him,
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I don't know, and the other pasuk is like, I mean there are some people, unfortunately, Rabbeim, who not in this yeshiva, of course, but like people, whatever, who are like, like they present themselves as if they know so much, but in reality, there's really no substance to it.
I think that's a good interpretation. I wouldn't be surprised if the meiri says that. Okay, so let's do this now. I think we got lots of good ideas. Let's I'm not even going to type out the translations. We're just going to read through some of the meforshim really quickly and see how what we said isn't what they say. Okay. So it is funny. This is a weird. Oh, sorry. Let's go to the Mitzvah Sion first. There's sometimes you'll find a guy who is endeavoring to become wealthy, and he doesn't have anything. And a guy who's working to impoverish himself and will attain great wealth. Okay, now he hasn't said anything so far. So he takes it as the guy who's endeavoring to become wealthy is doing it through theft. Ultimately, he's going to become poor. And the guy who is impoverishing himself by giving tzedakah will ultimately become rich. I don't want to get into the whole question here about like, this is definitely an idea in Chazal and in the Torah about how like, if you give tzedakah, then you become wealthy. And if you steal from the poor, then you're going to lose your money. I've given Pirkei Avos shiurim on this, I think last year, so like you could listen to that there. But that's just how he's taking the pasuk that it's reward and punishment. Okay, Rabbeinu Yonah is weird. Have you ever seen a Rabbeinu Yonah this short? 5 words, very weird for Mishlei. I don't know if this is a thing where like he said more and like the manuscript got cut off or something like that. He says Yish mis asher vein kol. There are those who make themselves wealthy. Lihis gaos, lihis kabed, to be like to aggrandize themselves and to make themselves honored, but they don't really have anything. So that's closest to like Ariel's approach of like projecting a wealthy self-image, but Rabbeinu is not really telling us what to make of that. Okay, so we can't really see what he holds about that. Okay, Meiri starts off by quoting Rashi. This is a long Meiri. Okay, Meiri quotes Rashi, but we'll just read Rashi through the Meiri. He says, Gamzos etel katas meforshim rei Rashi tochakas amanias hagzelos machamasim. So that's similar to Metzudas Tzion, that this is rebuking people for stealing and doing violence or robbery. Umiyad onish aleim is telling them that they're going to be punished. Ve'ara ahat stakos umini matanos haruyos, and it's telling you to give tzedakah and give proper gifts. Umiyad gemul aleim, and it's promising you a reward. Amar alzeh yishmi shahaya ani v'nis asher v'sofo she'en lo klum. There was a guy who was poor. Then he became wealthy, but then he ends up with nothing. Why? Because he got wealth through theft and robbery. And it's promising about him he's going to remain poor. So this is like my dad mentioned, like a Bernie Madoff. I don't know what Bernie Madoff started off with, but like, you scam people, and just mishleically, you don't even have to learn this as hashgacha. Mishleically, then there is a high probability they're going to end up losing everything, There are guys who start off as rich and then they impoverish themselves, and then they become wealthy again. But who also these are people who impoverish themselves through their gifts and their tzedakah. And it testifies that he'll have a lot of wealth. God will make him successful as a reward. And we've done a lot of pasukim about that also, about how when you give tzedakah, you'll become rich, mishleically. Okay, next. Some say that this is an ordinary piece of advice about diligence. To gather and to amass and to preserve after you attain it. Klomar, Yishmis Asher Lerov Charitzuso, they're those who gain wealth due to their great diligence. Shelo Haya Lo Klum Mikodem. Oh, he's reading it like this. There are those, okay, this is a third translation. Translation 1C. There are those who make themselves rich, but start off with absolutely nothing. Okay. And there are those who become poor when they had great wealth. So that's like, it's closest to what Tamar said, even though Tamar was talking about the circumstances, but like, this is the classic rags to riches story, and this is the classic Rockefeller Third Dynasty story, of like all the people who become, who start off, and then they are just irresponsible with their wealth and they lose it all. Okay, so that is the Meiri. The Meiri's, what is this now? That's a second interpretation. Yeah. He says Avish Misrosh Pizuro Achashayalo Honrab. That's the lottery winner. Okay. Next, Vish Mefarshim, also in the Meiri. Mis Asher Shemachzik Atmoka Asher. So we read this first part already. People who pretend to be wealthy or pretend to be poor. And the point of the pasuk is to tell you that both of these are bad character traits. You should not do that. Ki hamis asher yigrum la'atmo hotzaos bilti trichos. If you pretend that you're wealthy, this is interesting, very much like advice, you're going to cause many expenditures for yourself that are unnecessary. Yizdaldil mehem achlo yuchulu. And then you're going to become so poor that you can't hide it anymore. So this is like the thing where, like, if you try to keep up the wealthy image, it's going to cost you more and more, and then you're not going to be able to keep up the act anymore. You're not going to be able to make the payments on your fancy car that you're leasing. Or like you're not going to be able to constantly get new clothing for every social event. So like or the credit card company is going to come after you. Hamis Roshesh, and someone who pretends to be poor. You're going to cause yourself stinginess and degradation, and it's going to cause you to withhold from tzedakah and donations. Now, that's something that is not like the Warren Buffett, right? Because Warren Buffett lives a modest lifestyle. He doesn't pretend to be poor. He's not like someone. He's not like trying to, like, let's say, conceal from all the people that he's actually poor. He's saying that if you want to keep up an image of poverty to other people, like to mask it, it's interesting. He's saying it might cause you to refrain from tzedakah. I guess you could see this happening, that if there are people who don't want others to know that they're rich, because then people will come after them for donations, and so that he's saying is a bad midah. If you're trying to maintain this image in a way that's going to like make you be stingy. Also, I think the degradation thing as well, like there are people who want to keep up this image of poverty to the point where they actually will, let's say, like, I don't know, like not provide good health care for their kids, or like not have a functional car, or like, not have a house that's like, protected from like, bad, like they'll go so far into the image that it really is a symptom of like, miserliness rather than an actual like, humility and modesty. Yeah. Okay. More Meiri. Oh, let's go Meiri Derek Nister. Yep, this is what Ariel said. Derek Nister, Adam Farsha Kapir Shashlishi. So the third one is you interpret it as pretending. There are people who act and declare themselves as wise. They don't have anything. They don't have any knowledge. If you find someone like that, you should be careful not to learn from him, not to learn from his mind, not to listen to his svaras. Guard from him like you would guard from hazards, from dangerous things. It's like Socrates says that this guy's filled not with knowledge, but with the conceit of knowledge. There are other people who know a lot and they're perfect in their chachma, but they hide their chachma. Who gam kain holy ra habar. That's also an evil sickness. So not like Arya was saying. This is like a person who is and I'm not naming names. Okay. Yeah, I'm not naming names because I don't know what their circumstances were, but they're like people who are like geniuses but don't teach or write, and like or don't like help their community in terms of like their chachma, like that he says is minias bar. That's like withholding grain. Like we learn in the pasuk, one who withholds grain, the regimes will curse him. The Chazal darshan the pasuk in Mishlei when it says she has felled many victims. That's a talmid who has reached the level where he can paskin. Sorry, he has not reached the level where he can paskin, but he does paskin. Va'atumim kol harogeha, and mighty are all those who she has killed. That's some a talmid who has reached the level where he can paskin, but he doesn't paskin. This is the Gemara that Rav Moshe Feinstein quotes in the introduction to Igros Moshe, where he basically says, like if someone says, like, why are you, who? He didn't say this, but if someone says, who do you think you are? Like, write this pasuk for everyone. He says, look, Chazal say that like if you are not on a level to paskin, but you paskin, then that's really bad. And Chazal also say that if you are on the level to paskin and you don't, then that's also really bad. And like, what can I say? Like, if someone asks me a question and I know how to answer it, I'll answer it. And then he ended up bringing Igros Moshe. So he says, Amruzal, and says in Pirkei Avos 4:20, Halamed Tormin has a kenim doma leochal anavim mevushalos v'shos yayin yashan. Someone who learns from the elders is comparable to someone who eats ripe grapes and drinks aged wine. That's a good thing. But Lamin Tormin habechurim, someone who learns Torah from the youths, doma leochal anavim kehos v'shos yayin megito. That's comparable to someone who eats bitter grapes and drinks wine, young wine. Rotzalomar kehos shemakhos shine ha'adam, that it like blunts your teeth, it makes you cringe. V'shose yain megiddo shu mevala hadas vasechal. And drinking young wine, he says, it confounds your mind. V'dai b'zeh l'mashe ramaz olav. It's enough what we alluded to. Whoa. Okay, I was following him up until he said it's enough what we alluded to. I don't know what he's alluding to now. I think I get his ideas. Yeah, I don't know if he's like, I don't know what he's talking about, that last part. Okay, mysterious. Yeah. Okay, so Ariel, you were right about the Derek Nister. Okay, let me just skim these and see if there's any other people's ideas. Oh yeah, let's read Radak. Okay, if you have to go, you have to go. But we might we've done 8 ideas. We might as well do 8 more. Okay. Yesh means asher hamafarshim pirshu hapasuk al shnei panim. The mafarshim explain this in 2 ways. Yesh means shapirish ki yesh adam shemara atma asher who chaser kol miskabel einei ha'am ki'ilu hu asher lefi sheyesh lo. So he says there are people who pretend to be rich and they really lack everything, but they want honor. they want people to honor them as if they are wealthy. Because they have a precious soul. Okay, I don't think it means precious here. It means like, you'll see what it means. And they don't want to degrade their honor. Umistapik bebeso bepas umelach. Oh, they have a refined soul, maybe. Oh no, I don't know what he's saying. What's their call? Oh no, sorry. That's the second person. So in other words, this person doesn't want to he views it as beneath his dignity to actually like seem the level of wealth that he actually is. And then I think the other person, no, what do you say? Umistapik bebeso bepas umelach. And he's content in his house with bread and salt. I think maybe he means that he does not want to just be content with bread and salt. Let's see. There are others who will who are wealthy, but they act as though they're poor, and they are involved in a degrading work in order to acquire wealth, and they don't care about their honor. Not exactly getting the type of personality he's saying. Okay. Yeah. Tamar?
It's a little bit of a guess, but it kind of sounds like someone who's like pathological. Like they don't need the money, but they're like, they just have to be making more kind of, and they're doing things.
Oh, yeah, right. That's a good, that fits. Let's read that again and see. So there's a guy who pretends to be rich because he wants the honor, and he views it as beneath his honor to degrade it, but he really just has bread and water, bread and salt in his house. That's like a miser, right? Like that's like, well, it's a type of miser, right? That he wants the image and the covet of being rich, but he can't bring himself to like spend on on the basics more than the basics. And then this guy who like who is rich, and he just is compulsively making money, but like he lives this poor life, does this degrading work. Yeah, it's a weird. I mean, it fits in with the Yesh paradigm. This is like a weird corner case. Okay, v'in yesh mi shapirish ki yesh adam shu asher v'is hafech galgal v'yarad min lechas v'yesh anisha shah mesachakas lo yala la'asher. This is the simplest interpretation. He says there's a guy that might be telling you that there's a guy who got lucky. Literally, his cycle came around and he got really rich, and then he became poor again. And then there's another person who can become really poor, and then he'd go back to being rich. Okay, so this is like the guy who like struck it big in the crypto, like don't be fooled by the fact that there could be people who just like hit a windfall, but then you're all jealous of them and like you view them as great or whatever, then they just go back. Okay, I'm not going to read all the meforshim here, but just the usual ones. Okay, I think these are all more or less the same. Read one more. Yeah, actually, I think we're good for tonight. I think we got like a bunch of ideas. Okay, so let's do a quick review. Okay, we have Rivki's idea about which was a multi-directional idea that how you relate to the money is the important thing. So you can have a lot of objective money, but like relate to it in a bad way, and you really don't have the value. I think the Haman is a good example of that. And then you can also have very little money, or get make yourself impoverished, and still have wealth if you have your true values. Okay, then my dad's idea was a warning to other people to not be taken in by people's appearances because they could scam you in various ways. Then Tamar's first idea, which is really an idea that applies to lots of them, is that the Yesh is telling you that there are corner cases like this, and that should cause you to be on guard and not just assume that everyone has the best intentions and the most, and is what they portray. We had my idea of like people who will make a lot of money and not be content, and then there are people who will lose a lot of money and still be content, as if they're wealthy. And Ayala said that making themselves impoverished could be in order to perfect themselves, which could be either for precious reasons or, like we said, for tzedakah. Avital's idea was about that there are people who like make a lot of money, but really there's nothing objectively good that they contribute to themselves or to the society or to the world. So they really don't have a lot. And then there are people who will be willing to sacrifice everything for society or for an idea or for something that they truly believe in that is, let's say like for learning, and that is real wealth. And David added that this is not just advice to do that, but to partner with people like that because they're going to stick through to the end. Isaiah said this is financial advice, which is you can get rich quickly and then lose it due to mismanagement, or you could make yourself poor for a strategic investment and then skyrocket in wealth. And Tamar said this is financial advice about how you can make a lot of money even though the world has no money right now, and you can lose a lot of money, or even though the world has a lot of money. Don't just assume that it's going to go based on the circumstances. Ariel's second idea was about projecting your self-image, which shows what you really view as important in life. So if you're projecting this image of wealth, even though you don't have any wealth, and that shows that that's really how you define yourself. And if you are not projecting a lot an image of wealth, even though you have a lot of wealth, then that shows that you don't really think that that's so important, which is a virtue. Then there was the Mitzudas Sion's idea, and also kind of Rashi's idea that this is talking about reward and punishment, either hashgacha or mishleic, about the fact that people who steal money to become wealthy will end up losing it, and people who give away money will become wealthy. There was the second idea about diligence, and the third idea about pretending, which to be wealthy or poor, and they're both negative qualities. Then there's the same thing in chachma with some remez that we didn't get, and then the last one was what was that? The last one? Yeah. Oh no, there's the Radak about the pathological cases of pretending to be poor or rich. And then there was the cycles of wealth. Don't be duped by that. And then let me just see really quickly if I have this in my old Mishlei notes. I feel like I do, but I don't really remember. What number is this? This is 13.7. 13.7. See what I wrote. Nope, I don't. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I can tell you one thing. This is a wealth of Mishlei ideas. And my prediction was right? I think this was not a hard pasuk. It's just that there are a lot of ways to interpret it, and they're all good. So this is a good example of a real multifaceted Mishlei pasuk. Teaches you tons of ideas, gets you thinking about the sugya, but just very few words. Okay, that was nice. Nice return to one Monday Night Mishlei. As far as I am concerned, we should be on, God willing, well, definitely next week. There's a slight chance, maybe not on the 15th, but should be on the 22nd and should be on the 29th. So I'll let you know about the 15th.
How many more weeks do we have of Mishlei around?
In a year?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Oh, to see if we
there's a pasuk that I'm waiting for.
Well, which one are you waiting for?
I think 24. 1324.
Oh, oh yeah, that's a great one. Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll get there.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not making promises, but I do think we'll get there. Okay. All right. Thanks for coming. This was really good.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
So much.
Thanks.